Julian Pierce was 38 years old when a security guard's innocent mistake revealed that his entire marriage was a lie. For 3 years, he'd walked away from Wall Street to build his wife's tech company from behind the scenes, restructuring deals, securing funding, bringing in the clients that made her a CEO. She called him her partner, told him they were building their future together. An $80 million acquisition deal was days from closing. Money he'd personally negotiated, a life they'd planned to share. Then Julian walked into her office building to surprise her with anniversary lunch. The guard smiled and said, "Her husband just went upstairs 20 minutes ago." Julian had never met this man, didn't correct him, just smiled and sat down. In the next 2 hours, Julian would uncover a truth so devastating it would redefine everything: the affair, the fraud, the systematic theft of his life's work, and the double life his wife had been living for years. What he did with that information would destroy her completely. But in that moment, sitting in that lobby, Julian Pierce made a decision that would change everything. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. Julian Pierce sat in his home office, the soft glow of dawn barely visible through the window. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, fine-tuning the last details of TechVista Solutions' acquisition projections. The numbers danced across his screen: debt ratios, revenue forecasts, market valuations. At 38, he'd mastered the art of turning complex financial data into corporate gold. The house was quiet. Vanessa had left an hour ago for what she'd called an early investor breakfast. She'd kissed his cheek, her designer perfume lingering in the air as she'd hurried out the door. Julian leaned back in his chair, rubbing his tired eyes. The $80 million deal was nearly perfect now. He'd spent months restructuring TechVista's debt, negotiating terms that would satisfy both the board and the acquiring company. His old Wall Street connections had proven invaluable. People still remembered the strategic genius who'd orchestrated some of the biggest tech deals of the past decade. 3 years ago, he'd walked away from his corner office at Goldman Sachs. His colleagues had thought he was crazy to leave investment banking at the peak of his career, but Vanessa had needed him. Her startup had shown promise, but she'd needed his financial expertise to turn that promise into profit. "We're partners," she'd said back then. "You build the foundation, I'll be the face. Together, we'll make this huge." Their agreement had made sense. Julian preferred working behind the scenes anyway. He'd secured their first round of venture capital funding through his network. He'd restructured their entire capital model, turning a struggling startup into a tech powerhouse. The client list he'd built through his Wall Street connections had transformed TechVista from a regional player into a national force. His phone buzzed, another text from Vanessa. "Missing my brilliant husband. How are those projections coming along?" Julian smiled, typing back a quick update. Their routine worked well. She handled the public side, the networking events, board meetings, investor presentations. He managed everything else from their home office, building the systems and structures that made her leadership possible. He'd even designed their entire IT infrastructure, ensuring they had enterprise-level security while maintaining flexibility for rapid growth. Looking at their framed wedding photo on his desk, Julian remembered their 6th anniversary was tomorrow. 6 years of partnership, of building something together. He touched the small box in his drawer, the vintage watch she'd been eyeing. Tomorrow, he'd surprise her at her office with lunch from Giovanni's, her favorite Italian restaurant. Funny, he thought, how he'd only been to her office twice in 3 years. "I like keeping work and home separate," she always said. "It helps me focus." He'd respected that boundary, like he respected her long hours and constant networking events. Building a company took sacrifice. His phone rang. Vanessa again. "Hey, handsome," she said, her voice warm. "The board meeting just wrapped up. Everyone loves the acquisition structure you designed. You're amazing, you know that? Just doing my part, Julian replied, smiling. How's your day looking? Back-to-back meetings until 6, then dinner with the Silicon Valley investors. Don't wait up. She paused. But I was thinking, after this deal closes, we should finally take that trip to Thailand. Just you and me. No laptops allowed. Sounds perfect, he said. They'd been talking about that trip for 2 years now, always pushing it back for one more deal, one more milestone. That evening, Vanessa breezed through the door just after 9, her energy filling the room. The acquisition is practically done, she announced, dropping her designer bag on the kitchen counter. I can almost taste those Thai beaches. Julian looked up from his laptop. Speaking of taste, I was thinking of bringing you lunch tomorrow, at your office, for our anniversary. He watched her face carefully. There it was, the slightest hesitation, gone so quickly he might have imagined it. Then her smile brightened. That would be lovely, she said, moving to kiss his cheek. Around 1 o'clock? Julian nodded, already planning the details. He'd call Giovanni's in the morning, order her favorites. Maybe they could take a proper lunch break, something they rarely did these days. She seemed so busy lately, always rushing from one meeting to another. I'm going to take a shower, Vanessa said, heading upstairs. Don't stay up too late working, okay? Julian turned back to his laptop, pulling up the final acquisition documents. Everything was coming together perfectly. The deal would close soon, and then they could finally take that trip, spend some real time together, just like they'd always planned. The glass and steel building that housed Tech Vista Solutions gleamed in the afternoon sun. Julian adjusted his grip on the Giovanni's takeout bag, its familiar logo bringing a smile to his face. Vanessa's favorites were inside: the truffle pasta she always ordered, the arugula salad with shaved parmesan, even the tiramisu she claimed was too decadent for lunch, but always finished. In his jacket pocket, the wrapped box containing the vintage Cartier watch felt heavy with promise. He'd noticed her lingering over it in an antique shop window months ago, had quietly returned to purchase it the next day. The rose gold would look perfect on her slender wrist. The lobby doors slid open with a soft whoosh. Julian stepped into the cool interior, taking in the modern decor he'd only seen twice before. A massive abstract painting dominated one wall, while sleek furniture in muted grays created conversation areas throughout the space. The security desk stood centrally positioned, staffed by an older man with kind eyes and gray hair at his temples. "Good afternoon," Julian said, approaching the desk. The security guard, Bernard, according to his name tag, looked up with a welcoming smile. "Good afternoon. Here to see Mrs. Pierce again? Her husband just went upstairs about 20 minutes ago." Bernard's eyes crinkled warmly. "She's been in a great mood today." Julian's world tilted sideways. The words, "her husband," echoed in his head, creating a strange buzzing sensation that seemed to drown out everything else. The takeout bag suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Years of high-stakes negotiations had taught Julian one crucial skill: never show your hand. His face remained pleasantly neutral as his analytical mind kicked into high gear. "Oh, he's still up there?" Julian heard himself say, his voice surprisingly steady. "Good, good. I'll wait down here. Don't want to interrupt anything important." Bernard nodded approvingly. "Very considerate of you. Feel free to have a seat. Can I get you some water while you wait?" "That would be great. Thanks." Julian settled into one of the gray armchairs, positioning himself with a clear view of both the elevators and Bernard's desk. The security guard brought over a bottle of water, and Julian seized the opportunity. "Busy day today?" he asked casually. "Oh, the usual Tuesday traffic," Bernard replied. "Though Mr. Pierce's visits always brighten things up around here." "Tuesday visits," Julian repeated thoughtfully. "Is that regular?" "Like clockwork. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Going on 2 years now, I'd say. Bernard seemed happy to chat. Always arrives in that beautiful black Mercedes S-Class. You know, the new ones? Must be doing well at Goldman Sachs. Julian's Honda Accord sat in the parking garage, practical and understated. He'd never seen the point of flashy cars. Goldman Sachs, he prompted. Yes, something in finance there. Always in those perfectly tailored suits. Bernard gestured to indicate someone tall. Athletic fellow. Mrs. Pierce put him on the permanent visitor list as Trevor Pierce pretty early on. Makes my job easier, not having to check ID every time. Trevor Pierce. Julian's mind catalogued the name while his exterior remained relaxed. Interested, but not too interested. Sounds like he's well known around here. Oh yes, everyone knows Mr. Pierce. He's at all the company events, holiday parties. They make such a lovely couple. Bernard paused, then added proudly, Mrs. Pierce even invited me to the staff Christmas party last year. They did this beautiful dance together. You know, like people who really know how to move together. Each casual revelation was a precise cut. Julian thought about all the holiday parties Vanessa had attended alone, claiming they were just boring work functions he wouldn't enjoy. The networking events that ran late. The investor dinners that required overnight stays. The boundaries she'd set, keeping him away from the office, crystallized with horrible clarity. It was never about maintaining work-life balance. It was about maintaining two separate lives. I should probably get going, Julian said, rising smoothly. Looks like the timing isn't right today. Want me to let Mrs. Pierce know you stopped by? No need, Julian replied, his smile perfectly calibrated. I'll catch up with her later. He walked out of the building, lunch and gift still in hand. The parking garage was mercifully empty as he reached his car. Once inside, he placed the Giovanni's bag and the wrapped watch on the passenger seat. His hands shook slightly as he gripped the steering wheel. He could go up there right now. Take the elevator to her floor. Walk into her office. Confront them both. The image played out in his mind with crystal clarity. Instead, Julian started the car. The familiar purr of the Honda's engine centered him. Years of Wall Street training surfaced like muscle memory. Gather data first, understand the complete picture, then execute with precision. Emotion was the enemy of effective action. He backed out of the parking space, his mind already organizing next steps. There would be records, electronic footprints, financial trails, patterns hidden in plain sight that he'd been too trusting to see. The lunch would go to waste. The watch would stay wrapped. But Julian had received something far more valuable: clarity. Julian's fingers flew across his keyboard the moment he reached his home office. The familiar screens came alive. Systems he'd built, secured, and maintained. He'd designed TechVista's entire digital infrastructure from this very desk, creating backdoors and administrative access points that Vanessa had never understood or questioned. The company's shared calendar system opened before him. He navigated to Vanessa's schedule, expanding the view to show the past 2 years. Patterns emerged immediately. Blocks of private meetings every Tuesday and Thursday, usually 3 to 4 hours long. Some were marked simply with T. He'd always assumed it meant team. Now, the truth was obvious. Julian exported the data to a spreadsheet, his analytical mind already calculating. 208 private meetings over 24 months. 624 hours of deliberate deception, minimum. The corporate credit card statements came next. As co-signer, he had full access, but had always trusted Vanessa to handle the reconciliation. Now he scrutinized every line item, creating a second spreadsheet to track the patterns. The Ritz-Carlton in Napa Valley, $3,200, during her wine country investor retreat. The Little Nell in Aspen, $400, while she was supposedly at a board strategy session. Van Cleef and Arpels, $2,500, No jewelry had ever appeared at home. Weekend trips to Miami, Chicago, New York, all carefully timed to solo investor roadshows. Julian's throat tightened as he discovered a recurring charge, $4,500 monthly to Wellington Property Management. A quick search revealed a luxury apartment building downtown, walking distance from Tech Vista's office. Property records showed a lease in Vanessa's name, starting 18 months ago. He dove deeper into the company's legal documents. Recent changes caught his attention. Subtle modifications to ownership structures, removal of his name from subsidiary agreements, transfer of intellectual property rights. His financial models, his client relationships, his strategic frameworks, all being quietly reassigned to entities he wasn't part of. The acquisition deal documents made his blood run cold. He'd spent months negotiating the $80 million sale, leveraging his Wall Street relationships, structuring terms that would benefit them both. But the final agreement had been routed through a separate LLC, Pierce Ventures Holdings. He wasn't listed anywhere. The entire payout would go directly to Vanessa. Email records revealed the calculated nature of it all. 4 months ago, she'd contacted Stanley & Wright, a law firm specializing in high-net-worth divorces. The subject line was clear: asset protection consultation. She'd been planning her exit meticulously, preparing to take everything they'd built together. Julian leaned back in his chair, his mind processing the magnitude of betrayal. This wasn't just about Trevor, about secret apartments or hidden jewelry. This was theft on a grand scale, of his work, his expertise, his future. She'd used his trust as a weapon, keeping him isolated at home while she dismantled his claims to their shared success piece by piece. The sound of tires on the driveway snapped him to attention. Julian quickly closed every window, cleared his browser history, and did a final check of his digital footprints. By the time the front door opened, he was in the kitchen, the perfect picture of domestic normalcy. "Honey!" Vanessa called out, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "Are you home?" "In here," he replied, marveling at how steady his voice sounded. She swept in, designer bag on one arm, smelling of expensive perfume. Her kiss landed on his cheek as she launched into an elaborate description of her day. "God, these board meetings are exhausting. 3 hours of going through projections, and then Thompson wanted to revisit the entire marketing strategy." Julian watched her lie with practiced ease, noting the subtle tells he'd never noticed before. The way she touched her hair when mentioning the board meeting, how her eyes never quite met his when discussing the timing of her day. "Let me make dinner," he offered. "You must be tired." "You're too good to me," she smiled, squeezing his arm. "I'll make us some tea first. Help you relax after your day too." Julian observed her prepare the tea with newfound awareness. She was too careful with his cup, too specific about which tea bag she used. When she turned to take a call from the office, he poured the contents down the sink, watching the liquid swirl away like his former trust. The deception was so complete, so carefully orchestrated, that a strange sense of professional admiration almost broke through his pain. Almost. The morning sun cast long shadows across the street as Julian parked his Honda Accord across from the Wellington, the luxury apartment building downtown. The sleek glass tower stretched 40 stories into the sky, its modern architecture a testament to status and wealth. He checked his watch. 8:45 a.m. Vanessa had left for early meetings an hour ago. From his laptop, Julian accessed the building's network. Security systems were always the weak point in luxury buildings. Companies spent fortunes on cameras, but cheaped out on network protection. Within minutes, he'd bypassed their visitor management system's basic security. The building's camera feeds populated his screen. He navigated to the lobby footage, methodically working backward through dates and times. Tuesday and Thursday patterns emerged immediately. His hands grew cold as he watched the scenes unfold. There they were. Trevor Michaels, tall, athletic, wearing tailored suits that probably cost more than Julian's entire wardrobe, entering with Vanessa at 7:30 p.m. last Thursday. Julian recognized him from Goldman Sachs profile photos he'd found online. They moved together with practiced familiarity, Trevor's hand resting possessively on the small of Vanessa's back. She leaned into him, laughing at something he said. Julian forced himself to keep watching. More footage, more patterns. Tuesday morning, 6:45 a.m. They emerged together, Trevor fixing his tie while Vanessa adjusted his collar. A goodbye kiss that lasted too long for people who needed to hide. They had no fear of being seen. This was their normal. Thursday afternoon, 2 weeks ago, Trevor arriving with shopping bags from high-end stores. Sunday evening, returning with overnight bags, clearly back from a weekend away. The timestamps matched perfectly with Vanessa's emergency board presentation prep in Chicago. Julian meticulously downloaded and archived everything, organizing files by date and time. His hands moved automatically while his mind processed the implications. This wasn't occasional hotel meetups or stolen moments. This was a fully realized relationship, hiding in plain sight. Opening a new browser window, Julian began searching social media combinations, nothing under their full names, too obvious. He tried variations: T. Michaels, V. Pierce, Michaels, Trevor M. On the 8th attempt, Vanessa, Michaels, NYC, and Trevor M. GS. Their profiles were carefully curated to avoid detection by name searches. But now that he had access, 3 years of their parallel life unfolded before him. The Caribbean vacation from last spring, Vanessa had claimed she was reconnecting with college friends. Photos showed her and Trevor on pristine beaches, sharing sunset cocktails, looking every bit the perfect couple. Christmas in Aspen, during her supposed strategy retreat. Trevor and Vanessa in ski gear, posing outside a luxury chalet. Her caption: "Another perfect holiday with my love." Comments from friends he'd never heard of. "You two are relationship goals," and "Power couple alert." Julian's chest tightened as he found an album titled Our Special Day from 18 months ago. Professional photos at some upscale venue overlooking Central Park. Vanessa in a cream-colored dress that could have been a wedding gown. Trevor in a tuxedo. They stood beneath an arch of white flowers, exchanging rings that they clearly didn't wear in their other lives. Comments scrolled beneath: "Congratulations to the happy couple. Mr. and Mrs. Michaels. Finally. So happy you two made it official." It wasn't legally binding. Julian would have found a marriage certificate, but they'd had some sort of commitment ceremony. They were playing house, creating a whole life together, while he sat at home building their company. Each photo felt like another twist of the knife. Dinner parties he'd never been invited to. Charity galas, where they posed as Manhattan's elite couple. Vacations that Vanessa had carefully hidden behind business trips, and girls' weekends. She hadn't just been cheating. She'd been living the life she actually wanted, while keeping Julian tucked away as her secret business architect. Julian saved everything, methodically downloading photos and screenshots. His phone felt heavy as he dialed Leonard Kim's number at Galaxy Tech. Leonard answered on the second ring, his voice warm with familiarity from their Wall Street days. "Julian, how's the deal coming along?" "Actually, Leonard, that's why I'm calling." Julian kept his tone casual but concerned. "I think we need to clarify some ownership structure questions before closing." The shift in Leonard's voice was immediate. "What kind of questions?" "Due diligence issues this late could be problematic. Just want to ensure all intellectual property rights are properly documented," Julian replied smoothly, "particularly regarding the financial models and client relationship." "Send me the details." Leonard's lawyer instincts were clearly triggered. "We can't move forward with any uncertainty around ownership." Julian ended the call, satisfaction mixing with his pain. The first thread had been pulled. The morning sun filtered through the windows of Café Luna. a small coffee shop 15 miles from Tech Vista's office. Julian chose this location carefully. No chance of running into anyone from the company. He watched Patricia Okafor approach, her usually confident stride showing hints of concern. Patricia slid into the booth across from him, declining the waitress's offer of a menu. "Julian, I have to admit, I was surprised to get your call. We've never met like this before." "Thank you for coming, Patricia." Julian's voice was steady, measured. "What I'm about to show you needs to stay between us for now." He opened his laptop, turning it so she could see the screen. "These are emails from Vanessa over the past 2 years. I've highlighted the relevant parts." He scrolled through messages, where Vanessa explicitly instructed Patricia to remove Julian's name from reports, redirect his communications, and present his work as solely Vanessa's creation. Patricia's dark eyes narrowed as she read. Her hands gripped her untouched water glass. "I knew something wasn't right. But this..." She looked up at Julian. "The financial restructuring model everyone praised her for last quarter. That was your work, wasn't it?" Julian nodded. "Along with the client acquisition strategy, the debt restructuring, and the entire back-end infrastructure." He pulled out more documents, financial records, system architectures, client communications. "Everything that makes Tech Vista valuable I built. And now..." He showed her the acquisition documents revealing how Vanessa had restructured the deal to exclude him. "My God!" Patricia sat back, shoulders tense. "I should have said something sooner. The way she'd dismiss your contributions in meetings, how she'd change the subject if anyone asked about you." She shook her head. "I justified staying quiet as maintaining professional boundaries, but..." "You were doing your job," Julian assured her. "But now I need your help. This goes beyond professional discourtesy. She's committing fraud." Patricia reached for her bag, pulling out her own laptop. "Actually, I have something you should see." She opened several email threads. "Vanessa's been telling the board you're contracted help who doesn't understand your real position. She's been laying groundwork to remove you entirely after the acquisition." Julian reviewed the emails, his jaw tightening. Vanessa had described him to board members as a consultant who's gotten confused about his role, and someone will need to phase out sensitively. "There's more," Patricia continued. "I've documented every instance where she's taken credit for your work. Meeting recordings, presentation slides, board updates. I kept copies of everything. Something felt wrong, and I've learned to trust my instincts." Julian took detailed notes as Patricia walked him through her documentation. Each piece strengthened the case he was building. After an hour, they had a clear timeline of Vanessa's systematic erasure of his contributions. From Café Luna, Julian drove directly to Beverly Henderson's law office. The attorney's reputation for handling complex corporate fraud and marital dissolution cases was legendary. Her office, with its rich wood paneling and city views, radiated competence and discretion. Beverly reviewed the evidence methodically, asking precise questions about documentation and timing. "This is comprehensive fraud," she confirmed, tapping the stack of papers. "She's stolen your intellectual property, misrepresented ownership to investors, and committed marital fraud. We can build a strong case." "What's our strategy?" Julian asked. "Multiple fronts," Beverly replied, already making notes. "Corporate fraud litigation, intellectual property claims, and divorce proceedings. We'll need to coordinate timing carefully." She looked up sharply. "Have you confronted her yet?" "No. I'm gathering everything first." "Good. Keep it that way. Let's get all our pieces in place." After leaving Beverly's office, Julian made strategic calls to his Wall Street network. Casual conversations with key players, carefully mentioning concerns about Tech Vista's acquisition structure. He knew how quickly information traveled in investment circles. Within hours, people would be asking questions. That evening, Vanessa paced their living room, phone pressed to her ear. After ending her call, she turned to Julian with obvious frustration. The board is suddenly nervous about timing, and Galaxy Tech's lawyers are asking all these detailed questions about company structure. I don't understand what's changed. Julian looked up from his laptop, the picture of concerned support. You're working too hard. Maybe take tonight off? We could watch that movie you mentioned. Vanessa's expression softened. Maybe you're right. She went to the kitchen, and Julian watched her prepare their evening tea with practiced movements. Her careful measuring of the honey, the precise, steep time, details he'd never questioned before. They settled on the couch, Vanessa curling against him as the movie started. When she dozed off halfway through, Julian carefully collected the tea residue from both cups, storing it in sample bags Beverly had provided. Tomorrow, it would go to the lab for testing. Julian stared at the laboratory report on his desk, his hands trembling slightly. The clinical language was unmistakable. Zolpidem metabolites detected in consistent, low-dose concentrations. Months of samples, all showing the same pattern. Beverly Henderson sat across from him, her expression grim. "This isn't just about keeping you drowsy in the evenings, Julian," Beverly said, tapping the report. "This is methodical. The dosage is carefully calculated. Enough to affect you, but not enough to raise suspicions if you ever had routine blood work." Julian ran his hand through his hair. "She's been drugging me every night. While living another life with Trevor, while stealing my work." His voice trailed off as Beverly pulled out another folder. "It gets worse," she said quietly. "My team found these communications between Vanessa and Andrew Morton, a lawyer specializing in conservatorships." She spread several printed emails across the desk. She was exploring options for, in her words, managing an uncooperative spouse's business claims. Julian read through the exchanges, his stomach tightening. Morton's responses were careful but clear. Establishing a pattern of cognitive impairment could support a petition for conservatorship. Medical records showing consistent disorientation, memory issues, or unstable behavior would strengthen the case. "The sedatives weren't just to keep you out of her way," Beverly explained. "She was building a record. If you ever discovered what she was doing and tried to fight back, she could claim you'd been experiencing psychological decline. Your own behavior, drowsiness, confusion, memory gaps, would support her story." "She was going to have me declared incompetent," Julian said flatly. "Take everything and make it look legitimate." "Yes, and given your isolated work-from-home situation, limited social contact, and her control of your professional communications." Beverly didn't need to finish the thought. Julian turned to his computer, pulling up files from his investigation of Trevor Michaels. "Trevor doesn't even know I exist, not as her husband anyway." He showed Beverly the social media accounts, messages, photos. She told him she was divorced, that I'm just a possessive ex-colleague who can't let go. The business partner who doesn't understand boundaries. Beverly reviewed the evidence. "This works in our favor. If Trevor learns the truth..." Julian was already creating an anonymous email account. He worked methodically, compiling irrefutable proof of his marriage to Vanessa, their wedding certificate, joint tax returns, property records. He selected photos carefully, their wedding day, family holidays, casual moments at home. Then he added the most damning evidence, security footage from their home system. The videos were intimate, not in a sexual way, but in their quiet domesticity. Vanessa calling Julian honey as she handed him coffee. Their last anniversary, her arms around his neck as she thanked him for being the best husband. Morning kisses, evening cuddles, all time-stamped and undeniable. Julian sent the dossier to Trevor's personal email. Then he settled in to monitor the fallout through TechVista's communication systems. Trevor's response was immediate and explosive. Julian watched the cascade of messages. "Trevor, what the hell is this? You're married?" Vanessa, "Someone's harassing me. Ignore it." Trevor, "There's video from your house with dates." Vanessa, "Julian is unstable. He's created this fantasy. Trevor, stop lying. Tax returns, wedding photos, security footage. Julian sent a second anonymous email to Trevor, this one containing footage from specific dates. Days Trevor believed he and Vanessa were together exclusively. Vanessa at home with Julian, being affectionate, discussing their future, all while maintaining her relationship with Trevor. The final message from Trevor came hours later. We're done. Don't contact me again. I can't believe I risked everything for your lies. That evening, Vanessa came home later than usual. Her composed facade showed cracks, slight tremors in her hands, tension around her eyes. She poured herself a large glass of wine. Rough day? Julian asked sympathetically. Just acquisition stress, she mumbled. The lawyers are being difficult. Everything's so complicated right now. Julian moved to rub her shoulders, feeling her lean into his touch. You're doing too much. Let me make dinner tonight. You're too good to me, she whispered. I'll always support you, Julian replied softly, meaning something entirely different than what she heard. He felt her relax under his hands, believing herself still in control, still managing both her worlds. She had no idea both those worlds were already crumbling. Julian's phone buzzed with the email from Galaxy Tech's legal department. He read it twice, absorbing every carefully worded line, requesting both founders' presence to address material discrepancies in ownership documentation. Within minutes, a second notification arrived, the Tech Vista board demanding an emergency session with both Julian and Vanessa present. He heard Vanessa's heels clicking rapidly down the hallway before she burst into his home office. Her face flushed. Have you seen these emails? Her voice was higher than usual, strained. It's nothing to worry about, just lawyers being overly cautious. I'll handle everything like always. Julian looked up from his screen, projecting careful uncertainty. These questions seem specifically about my role and contributions. Shouldn't I be there to answer them directly? No, Vanessa said quickly, perching on the edge of his desk. These corporate meetings can be very technical. You might say something that confuses things. Better to let me explain. I know how to speak their language. But I worked in corporate finance for 15 years, Julian reminded her mildly. I think I can manage a board meeting. Vanessa's fingers drummed nervously on the desk. That was different. This is tech. The culture, the expectations. They're not what you're used to. Trust me, Julian. I've protected our interests this far. Our interests? Julian repeated softly. Then, you shouldn't mind me being there to understand how they're being protected. You're not ready, Vanessa snapped, then immediately softened her tone. I just mean, these people can be sharks. They'll try to twist your words. You haven't dealt with them before. Julian let his shoulders slump slightly, feeding her perception of his insecurity. Maybe you're right. But if I don't go, won't it look worse, like I have something to hide? He watched her process this, saw the moment she realized she couldn't prevent his attendance without raising suspicions. Fine, she conceded. But please, let me do most of the talking. These are delicate negotiations. Of course, Julian agreed meekly. I'll just be there to support you. After she left his office, Julian began executing the final stages of his plan. He messaged Beverly Henderson, confirming she'd coordinated with Leonard at Galaxy Tech about the forensic accounting team's findings. His phone buzzed with Patricia's update. She'd compiled comprehensive documentation showing the stark contrast between Julian's actual contributions and Vanessa's public claims. Julian's carefully cultivated investor contacts had formally requested the emergency board meeting, citing serious fiduciary concerns about ownership transparency. Each piece was falling perfectly into place. Then came Patricia's most crucial message. Meeting invitation sent to Trevor Michaels as requested. His assistant confirmed his attendance. Through the wall, Julian could hear Vanessa's increasingly agitated phone conversations. She was calling board members, lawyers, trying to control the narrative. Her voice grew more desperate with each call. "There's been a misunderstanding. No, those documents aren't accurate. I can explain everything." That evening, Julian meticulously reviewed every piece of evidence, every document, every email chain. He arranged them in precise order, building an irrefutable timeline of deception. In their bedroom, he could hear Vanessa tossing and turning. Around midnight, he heard the distinctive rattle of her sleeping pill bottle. She'd stopped trying to give him his evening tea. The next morning, Julian dressed with particular care, selecting his finest Wall Street suit, charcoal gray Tom Ford, impeccably tailored. It was from his investment banking days, something he'd never worn since joining Tech Vista. He adjusted his Patek Philippe watch, another relic from his previous life that Vanessa had never seen. When they met in the kitchen, Vanessa was wearing her usual CEO armor, a sleek black power suit and Christian Louboutin heels. She paused when she saw him, her eyes widening slightly. "You look different," she said carefully. Julian smoothed his tie. "Just want to make a good impression. It's important to you, right?" "Right," she answered slowly. "We should leave soon. Traffic might be bad." "I'll drive separately," Julian said. "I have some papers to review first." He arrived at Tech Vista's offices 30 minutes early, taking the elevator to the main conference room. Beverly Henderson was already there, arranging documents. Leonard Kim stood with the forensic accounting team, reviewing figures. 3 major investors sat together, faces grave. Patricia occupied a seat near the head of the table, a stack of folders before her. And there was Trevor Michaels, looking distinctly uncomfortable in his Goldman Sachs polish, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Julian took his position at the head of the table, centered his papers, and waited. 10 minutes passed before they heard Vanessa's distinctive heels approaching down the hallway. Vanessa swept into the conference room with her usual commanding presence, designer heels clicking against the polished floor. Her confident smile froze as she took in the scene before her. Julian at the head of the table where she normally sat, Patricia beside him with stacks of documents, and most jarringly, Trevor Michaels sitting against the far wall, refusing to meet her gaze. The color drained from her face. For a moment, she stood motionless in the doorway, her practiced poise crumbling. "Please, take a seat, Mrs. Pierce," Julian said calmly, his voice carrying the quiet authority she'd never heard him use before. "We have several matters to address." Vanessa moved woodenly to an empty chair, her hands trembling slightly as she placed her leather portfolio on the table. "Let's begin with Tech Vista's actual development timeline," Julian stated, activating a presentation screen. "Starting with our initial funding round 3 years ago." He clicked through a series of slides, each documenting his direct involvement. The Series A funding came through Marcus Davidson at Goldman Sachs, my former colleague from the trading desk. The Series B was secured through William Chen at Blackstone. We worked together on the J.P. Morgan merger in 2018. Patricia distributed folders to everyone present. These contain email correspondence showing Mrs. Pierce's systematic efforts to exclude Mr. Pierce from company communications and credit for his work, she explained, her voice steady but tinged with disappointment, including specific instructions to remove his name from investor presentations and client meetings he arranged. Julian continued methodically through each major client relationship. Reditech signed with us because of my previous work restructuring their European division. Monarch Systems came through James Foster. We've known each other since business school. Vector Solutions was brought in through my consulting work with their CFO. Leonard Kim stood next, gesturing to his forensic accounting team. Our investigation revealed significant irregularities in the proposed acquisition structure, he stated professionally. Despite documented evidence of Mr. Pierce's foundational contributions and clear ownership stake, recent amendments attempted to redirect all proceeds through a separate LLC controlled solely by Mrs. Pierce. Beverly Henderson rose next, her legal expertise evident in her precise tone. "We've uncovered extensive evidence of deliberate financial concealment," she announced, passing out another set of documents. "Multiple hidden accounts, systematic transfer of marital assets, and a complex network of shell companies designed to obscure ownership." Vanessa attempted to interrupt, her voice taking on the smooth, persuasive tone that had served her so well in boardrooms. "There seems to be a misunderstanding about corporate structure and—" "No misunderstanding," Julian cut her off quietly. He turned to Trevor, who seemed to shrink under his direct gaze. "Mr. Michaels, would you please explain your understanding of Mrs. Pierce's marital status over the past 2 years?" Trevor cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Vanessa told me she was divorced," he said, his voice barely carrying across the room. "She said her business partner Julian was a former colleague who didn't understand boundaries. She asked for my help setting up offshore accounts for the acquisition proceeds. Said we'd use the money to start a new life together." The investors stirred, their expressions darkening. One of them, Martin Chen, spoke up sharply. "We invested based on representations of clear ownership and ethical leadership. This level of deception and financial manipulation is completely unacceptable." Vanessa tried again, switching tactics to appear vulnerable. "I can explain everything. The pressures of growing this company, trying to protect everyone's interests." "The only interests you protected were your own," Patricia interjected, sliding forward another document. "This email chain shows you explicitly planning to phase Mr. Pierce out after the acquisition, despite his ownership rights and ongoing contributions." Leonard stood again. "Given these revelations, Galaxy Tech is formally withdrawing from acquisition negotiations pending full legal review and ownership clarification. We cannot proceed under these circumstances. The board hereby suspends Vanessa Pierce from all company operations, effective immediately," Martin Chen announced. "Patricia Okafor will assume interim leadership responsibilities. Security will escort you to clear your office." People began gathering their materials. Trevor was the first to leave, slipping out without a backward glance. The investors followed, then Leonard and his team. Patricia gave Julian a supportive nod before exiting. Beverly Henderson waited by the door. Vanessa remained seated, staring at the polished table surface. Her carefully constructed world had imploded in less than an hour. Finally, she looked up at Julian, who was methodically organizing his document. "Julian, please," she whispered. "We can fix this." "No," he interrupted, his voice devoid of emotion. "You can't fix what you deliberately destroyed. You have 24 hours to remove your personal items from our home. After that, the locks will be changed." He walked out of the conference room without looking back, leaving Vanessa alone with the ruins of her deception. The evening shadows lengthened across their living room as Julian waited, seated in his favorite leather chair. The sound of Vanessa's key in the lock echoed through the quiet house. She entered, still wearing her power suit from the board meeting, though now it looked somehow diminished, like costume jewelry exposed under harsh light. "You've ruined everything," she said, dropping her purse on the marble entryway table. "Years of work, destroyed in a single morning." Julian didn't move from his chair. "Your deception was destroyed. There's a difference." "This is all just a misunderstanding," Vanessa tried, moving closer, her voice taking on the smooth, reasonable tone she used to calm nervous investors. "If you'd let me explain." "Explain what?" Julian's voice remained steady as he held up his phone, displaying their security camera feed. "The Tuesday and Thursday afternoon visits to your downtown apartment with Trevor. The Christmas in Aspen, where you posed as Mrs. Michaels? Or perhaps you'd like to explain this?" He placed a laboratory report on the coffee table between them. Vanessa's composure cracked slightly. "What is that?" "Analysis of the tea you've been serving me for the past 6 months. Interesting combination of sedatives. Subtle enough to make me drowsy and compliant in the evenings, not enough to raise suspicion." very calculated. Her face flushed with anger. You're destroying everything we built together, all because of some paranoid delusion. We didn't build it together, Julian interrupted. I built it. You took credit. There's documented evidence of every decision, every strategy, every client relationship. You didn't even understand the financial models you presented as your own work. Vanessa's tactics shifted. Tears welled in her eyes as she sank onto the sofa. Julian, please. I know I made mistakes, but I do love you. We can start over. Rebuild trust. Like you were planning to rebuild with Trevor using the money from my acquisition deal? He placed another document on the table. Emails between Vanessa and Trevor discussing their future plans. She wiped her eyes, the tears vanishing as quickly as they'd appeared. Her hand moved to unbutton her blazer. Remember how good we were together? She purred, trying a different approach. We can have that again. Better than before. Julian's laugh was cold. You're still trying to manipulate me, even now. That's what you never understood. I saw through every performance. I chose to believe in our partnership despite the evidence. That was my mistake. Vanessa's sensual pose dissolved. Her face hardened. Fine. If that's how you want to play this, I'll fight you for every penny. You'll get nothing. You've already lost everything, Julian stated matter-of-factly. Beverly filed for divorce this morning with complete documentation of your fraud. Galaxy Tech has permanently withdrawn. They wanted your supposed leadership vision, not a fraudulent shell game. The board removed you as CEO an hour ago. Patricia's interim replacement. He continued methodically. Your separate LLC's assets are frozen pending federal investigation. Those offshore accounts Trevor helped you set up? Flagged for criminal review. Speaking of Trevor, Goldman Sachs terminated him today after their compliance department discovered his role in hiding marital assets. He's already agreed to testify against you to save himself. Vanessa's face had gone pale. You can't prove. Every tech investment circle in the country knows the story. My old Wall Street network made sure of that. Your family's seen the evidence. They called earlier to say they want no further contact. You're facing civil litigation from investors, possible criminal charges, and your reputation is destroyed. Julian finally stood, straightening his suit jacket. You mistook my support for weakness. You thought the man who built empires on Wall Street couldn't see through your small-time scheme. You underestimated me because I chose to work behind the scenes. That was your fatal mistake. He placed a final folder on the table. These are the settlement terms. You'll sign over all claims to Tech Vista, the house, our joint assets. You'll accept responsibility for legal fees and potential penalties. In exchange, I won't pursue additional criminal charges, though the federal authorities might. Your public defender can review it tomorrow. Public defender? Vanessa whispered. Trevor's blocked your calls. Your assets are frozen. Your family's cut contact. Who else would represent you? Weeks later, they sat in Beverly's office. Vanessa's public defender looked uncomfortable as she reviewed the settlement terms. The contrast between them was stark. Julian in his perfect suit, Vanessa in department store business wear, her designer wardrobe long since sold to pay bills. She signed each page Beverly indicated. As the final document was notarized, Vanessa stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. I did love you once, Julian. He met her gaze steadily. No, you loved what I could build for you. You never imagined I could destroy it just as easily. The Pacific stretched endlessly before Julian as he stood in his living room, early morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. 6 months had transformed his life completely. The modern coastal home felt like a physical manifestation of his fresh start. Clean lines, open spaces, and absolute tranquility. No traces of his past life remained, no echo of Vanessa's presence. He sipped his morning coffee, prepared exactly as he liked it, and checked his phone. A series of updates from his network painted the picture of aftermath. Vanessa had relocated to Phoenix, renting a cramped studio apartment in a forgettable complex. Her LinkedIn profile, stripped of all TechVista references, listed her as a marketing coordinator at a local business supply company. She used her maiden name now, trying to distance herself from the scandal that still followed her. The civil litigation from angry investors dragged on, draining what little resources she had left. Her family maintained their silence. Her mother had changed her phone number. Her sister blocked her on social media. The tech industry's memory was long, and her name had become toxic. Trevor's fall had been equally spectacular. Goldman Sachs demoted him to a back-office compliance role, an exquisite irony given his crimes. His wife, a junior partner at a prestigious law firm, had filed for divorce after Julian's investigation exposed not just the Vanessa affair, but 3 others. Trevor's carefully constructed image of sophisticated success had crumbled into cautionary tale. He'd tried reaching out to Vanessa once, 6 months ago. She didn't respond. Julian's phone buzzed with a message from Patricia. TechVista was thriving under her leadership. The company culture had transformed, emphasizing transparency and genuine collaboration. Julian maintained a strategic advisory role, helping guide major decisions while keeping comfortable distance. His insight had proved invaluable when a new acquisition offer emerged. $65 million, lower than the original, but clean. The board approved unanimously. He sold his equity stake for $42 million, finally stepping away completely. Patricia's appointment as permanent CEO felt right. She understood both the company's value and its values. His new consulting firm, focused on helping entrepreneurs protect and leverage their intellectual capital, had taken off immediately. Word spread quickly in startup circles. Julian Pierce helped you build lasting value while maintaining control. His client list grew selectively, each project chosen with care. The isolation that marked his years with Vanessa had dissolved. Old friends from his Wall Street days reconnected, expressing relief at seeing the real Julian again. New friendships formed naturally, built on shared interests and mutual respect rather than ulterior motives. He joined a sailing club, took up photography, discovered he enjoyed cooking for friends rather than eating alone. Dating had begun cautiously. A coffee here, a dinner there. He was transparent about his past. It was public record anyway, but refused to let it define him. Sarah, an environmental lawyer he'd met through the sailing club, intrigued him. Their conversations flowed easily, and her genuine passion for her work reminded him that ambition and integrity weren't mutually exclusive. His business memoir, Building Value, Protect Your Worth in Business and Life, became required reading in entrepreneurship programs. He'd changed names and details, but the lessons resonated. Trust your instincts, document everything, and never mistake support for weakness. 2 years after Vanessa's downfall, Julian stood at a podium in San Francisco's largest convention center, delivering the keynote address at the Future of Business Leadership Conference. The topic, Building Sustainable Partnerships, felt particularly poignant. True partnership, he told the packed audience, requires equal respect, not equal roles. When one partner's contribution is diminished, the foundation cracks. Trust, once broken, isn't repaired with promises or performances. It's rebuilt through consistent actions and transparent dealings. During the Q&A session, he noticed her. Vanessa sat in the middle rows, wearing a plastic name tag from Market Right Solutions. She looked older, smaller somehow, her designer clothes replaced by off-the-rack business casual. The confident CEO persona had evaporated, leaving behind someone Julian barely recognized. After his speech, as colleagues gathered to discuss collaboration opportunities, she approached. Her steps were hesitant, nothing like her former commanding stride. "Julian, she began. He cut her off with perfect professional courtesy. "I'm sorry. Do I know you? I meet so many people at these events." His smile was polite, impersonal. Before she could respond, he turned to greet the CEO of a promising AI startup, seamlessly engaging in a discussion about ethical growth strategies. He didn't see Vanessa's face crumple, didn't watch her stand alone in the crowd as understanding finally dawned. She hadn't just lost money or status, but a partner who would have built the world with her, if only she'd valued him enough to build it honestly. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.